Yay! Zen Money Monday. We're at a little bit of a different time than usual, but it's because I am talking today with my good friend Matthew Patti, and Matthew is in Australia, so we had to figure out time differences today.
Yes.
Great. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Liz. Great to be here. Very excited. Very excited.
So I really want to get into the work that you're doing now, but before then, I usually ask everyone a little bit something about their background. And what's interesting for me about your background is you come from professional services background from the medical field, correct?
Yes.
So when you tell us a little bit about that, and then my question tied to that is, when you were working in the medical profession, were you on your own and sort of operating as a solo practitioner, or were you sort of an employee as part of a different environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I have a big smile on my face because I have never really seen myself as employable. I've tried a couple of times and I've done a reasonable job at it. Not a great job, because I think with us in entrepreneurs or business owners, way showers, whatever you want to call it, we cut our cloth in a very different way as to other people that deem themselves as employees or add their value or contribute value to someone else's business. So I've always been an entrepreneur from the very early age, 17, 18, 19. I think my first official job was $5 cash an hour working for a doctor, a general practitioner who was in his 80s. And he and his wife invited me around every Sunday morning for 3 hours to help him with his rose gardens. Now, he had 112 rose bushes.
Wow.
And he taught me about roses and about pruning and planting and weeding. And sure, it was really boring, but ever since then, I had that taste of working for myself, and so built quite a large team, having come back from the UK, and then worked on the fringes of medicine. I think because I really wanted things. I've always been a bit of a disruptosaurus, so I wanted to do things differently, and so that's put me on this journey.
So, working on the fringes, being a disruptor source, what exactly did that look like?
Well, it actually was being the fox in the hen house a little bit, is actually playing the game that everyone else was, as well as gleaning intel on where the performance mentality, the treatment, the future pacing of client services and health and well-being and general consciousness. And so I started to pick that up, that information up, and work with that over, a period of 10 to 15 years, gaining a little bit more confidence as I went along, because we're all, learn to a system if we've been professionally trained in something. So there was that, I say fringe, because I didn't fully resist or, objectify or even resent the industry. I actually wanted to work with it, but I wanted to do it in a different way.
Okay. So what did that lead to then? Because it's a very hard industry to change, as we all know. And from somebody who's gone down the rabbit hole where traditional Western medicine hasn't been the final answer from a chronic illness standpoint, I am very well aware that it's not an easy thing to do, to work within and also try to change or kind of work in this other way.
Yeah, that's a good question too. So I actually fell into it this way, which I thought was a little bit of genius on the universe's behalf. My clients were not actually patients in the end, or for quite a period. They were.
And you
actually,
were just to back up. You were working as a physical therapist, or what?
Yes. So as a physiologist, so I actually helped prepare people for surgery, post-treatment, and I actually consulted with the other medical fraternity, but also sports performance and elite and CEOs and those sort of things as well.
Okay.
So that's where my fringe started to come in. I said, so my clients are not the patient. My clients are actually the service delivery people of the medical industry. So surgeons were my clients, as I said, sports performance, athletes, CEOs, all those sorts of general practitioners, other health advisors. And so I started because I could see into the body, I actually had this little game with myself not only have I got a very interesting visual ability, to build constructs and visual imagery in my brain through imagination, but through learning what I'd applied and learnt about the body and all the systems and operating systems within the body, I could actually feel into the bodies of my clients. And so there was a confidence issue there. I wasn't really confident in sharing that information because it was so woo-woo, and because, back then, and still to a little bit, you've got chiropractic services and physical therapies and that were deemed very woo-woo back then and quite, fringed. So I guess looking at it now, I found myself in an extraordinary opportunity to be unique and to start dripping my own uniqueness in my own unique way into this unique, playing field. You could call it, blue ocean in a way.
Did you do it consciously?
No, not at the beginning.
I don't mean that like with the loaded term consciousness, but like,
no.
Is this a looking back? We can see connect the dots now.
Well, no, I don't think I was that smart enough to do that. I think I by the lining of stars and just being open, I'm quite open to new experiences, and I'm quite open to capture a window. It might be within the first 3 months of change, or first 1 month, or first, but I've actually reduced the window down in time, because I now can see the signs and synchronicities of when change is about to occur, or when there's, a change in energy or an opportunity coming. So back then, I think it probably was around the 3 to 9 months sort of mark that I started to think, wow, okay, this is quite unique. And then, all of a sudden, it seemed like all of a sudden, but it was hard work. There were very early mornings and quite late nights, and it was going for, many years. And there was a point there where I just said, something again has got to change and shift, because my consciousness, my will was calling me forward to something new. Because, when there's such a strong culture, or what we call a social complex as consciousness of energy, with medicine or any of the long-baked institutions, then it can be quite, difficult to brush up against them or work with them in a new, tangible way. So that's where, you look for these opportunities and start to forge a slightly new path,
So what did the next stage look like? So if we're sort of saying, all right, obviously you're no longer working in that same way, what was the next level? Because you also were participating in building another sort of standalone business entity, correct?
Yes. So there was a change in the world financial structure, as we all know, the GFC. And so around that 2008, 2009, there were some signals that were coming, and the language that was coming back to me from many of my clients, not all of them. There was a big contraction occurring. And these guys and girls are, doing very well, working very hard, but they've trained and worked very long. And so I started to see, well, there's a change coming. And I just opened myself. And it would seem out of the blue, I was contacted by a gentleman that was selling or wanted some sales reps or BDOs for a new genetic product. And it was a healthy genetic product, to a disposition of health and fitness and well-being, rather than a predisposition towards disease. And so I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then from there, I met a husband and wife team who were living in another state within Australia. And we, over a period of what seemed like a very short period of time, but I would say within a year, there was a new company formed. And the new company was, we created the first nutrigenomic education program in the world to teach practitioners how to read, interpret, genetic information or results. So to help people live a longer, healthier, happier life. And so that was born. And so that consumed me for the next couple of years. And still, the wheels on the bus kept turning. And again, the winds of change occurred as well.
What was the biggest sort of aha lesson around entrepreneurship or business building that you had during that process of building something, especially with other partners?
Yeah, that's another great question too. So there's two things with that. One is knowing that to create win-win-win outcomes, observing and embracing everyone's differences. Some people bring, the art of research and science and a depth there. Other people bring conversational, relational sort of skills and nurturers. Other people bring, front of house type. So it's really working together so that there is a win-win-win. So that's part of that. So having been, a solopreneur and being, the pointy end of my own pointy end for quite some time, it meant that I attracted other pointy end individuals. So trying to work with that dynamic, especially when we're raising capital for shareholders and all those sorts of things, can be a little challenging. So get your roles clearly defined and sorted out at the beginning, even if they have to evolve and be reviewed every 3 to 6 months in the starting phase. The second part, I'd say, is don't lose your entrepreneurial drive, because you're now working with other people, which means what brought you to these opportunities or brought these opportunities to you was your wide scope or this ability to dial into a certain piece of information that then revealed, a gap in the market behind it. So don't lose that entrepreneurial spirit, you could say, even though you're working with other people. Keep your uniqueness.
I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, because I've known you for a little while and I have the sense, and I don't know if it's true or not, I have the sense that, and many entrepreneurs I believe are like this, that the sort of what I call the ticky-tacky or day-to-day things that have to happen to keep the wheels on the bus turning in a business are really not interesting to many.
No.
And I'm wondering if that's the case for you, number one, and number two, if it was, how did you kind of marry with that in a more kind of structured organization like this genetics business?
Again, it was actually looking at, and in the coaching industry, it's very, I guess, an easy exercise is the traffic light system. Green, what's working and what we keep. The orange or the amber, what's not working as well, but has its role, and what's red, what's not working, dysfunctional, and needs to be cut and chucked out. So from the get-go, there's probably that first year where you really need to feel into a new business. What's required, VA-wise, support structure-wise, sales-wise, all that sort of thing. And then from there, as the CEO or the coup or whatever title you are, you really are across a lot of information and a lot of tasking in the first year as a startup, because remember, this was a startup too. So I've been involved in many startups, and so there's a lot of hard work and graft at the beginning. So until you can get a feel for where each what areas of the business really require most attention because they're competencies of yours, or you totally lack competency, but you don't want to go where you're excellent at. You want to stay where your genius is. So that's where you just outsource, and you make sure that is in your budget to outsource to effective people that are geniuses in those areas, because otherwise you have no scope, therefore no energy, and therefore no vision remaining in your conscious sphere to keep moving forward, because you're bogged down with that ticky-tacky, as you said.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, particularly in the coaching world, actually, but it's true across the board, regardless of your business type. But I think there's this idea that there's very much that conversation around get it to somebody who knows what they're doing with it, which is true. I think that the other underlying piece of it, though, also is that as business owners, we still need to understand what they're doing, right? Because if we completely outsource, then that's when fraud happens and all of these other things don't push it forward. So given that, how have you found, given that you're a very intuitive person, what is your hiring / decision-making around filling those kinds of roles in your businesses? Because you've had, as you said, multiple over the years. In terms of knowing when the right person is the right fit, if you yourself aren't, completely understanding or in-depth knowledge based on what those activities are?
That's another great
How do you know
question.
who the right fit is?
Well, I don't think we ever really know who the right fit is. I think we just have a heavier slant or a heavier, lighter feeling or a better feeling towards someone over another. So the first thing that came to mind when you asked that, Liz, was, what's the role you're looking for? If someone is front of house, if they are involved in customer satisfaction at any level, which means results, not just picking up the phone or sending an email or doing a sales call or a presentation. It's actually, is the geneticist, is anyone who's involved in customer service, how much interfacing do they need to do with the actual customer? So they need to have that ability. If there's someone that is, the chipping away at the stone tablets down in the basement and they're never seen and they are just purely operational for the company and they don't do any client billing or interfacing, then sure, their behavior, their attitude can be solely, ingenious and mastery around that. But still, you don't want them to be a cranky pants and that had no people skills whatsoever. So I've always believed that you can train someone a skill, but you can't train them a personality.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true too. When I've done hiring, it's the same thing. You look at what the qualifications are and you have conversations. And at the end of the day, a lot of times hiring is really just a gut decision.
Yes.
And I would guess that from your perspective, it's more than just this lip service gut decision. There's actually more going on there.
Yeah, totally. And you can sort of feel, when someone's, this is not a common conversation, but you can feel when someone is pushing their energy out in an interview or in a conversation to try and hold some frame, stability in some new light or holding themselves in a new light, or whether there's someone that is actually maybe a little bit nervous, but is totally congruent. So congruency and alignment, there's signs and symptoms for that pretty quickly. But look, staffing, again, it comes back to that client, employee, employer, adversarial relationship. Culture and community in organizations and even small business has changed a lot over the last 10 to 20 years. And so, but there still is, I hear from some of my clients too, oh gosh, they're just a little bit gripey, the team today, or they're not picking up where they should be and they're rounding, there's too many frayed edges. And it comes down to, well, at the end of the day, there is a consciousness as a business owner and there is a certain consciousness as an employee. Understanding and respecting both of those is important so that we can contribute and exchange value in both of those hemispheres. However, at times there are this, I wish to be the employer and the entrepreneur, and I wish for more scope and freedom in the business, and I'm not getting it as an employee. So I'm going to resent the fact that you seem to be taking time off. You seem to be traveling more. You seem to be out of the office or whatever it is. And you seem to be lighter and more carefree, when really, the perception is that you are literally operating in different states of consciousness, one at one level and one at another. So that's where communication is really key too.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that especially in online businesses, the fact of the matter is we call them teams. We often even call them employees, but they're not necessarily. And it's a very different dynamic. It's hard enough to manage the old school model. And the new school model, a lot of times, we have teams who know us and we know them, and, we know them as well as we would know a staff person working out of our own offices, but they might be half a world away and they're actually getting paid as a contractor because we aren't paying them as an employee, because everybody's got their own solopreneurship going. And so you might have a team of 10 people who are actually individual business owners, and we're trying to manage this very diverse community and make a cohesiveness in and out of it as well.
Totally good perspective on that too, because as we're changing more, there is a call for greater flexibility, but most importantly, more simplicity. Yeah.
So you have worked with a lot in various things, and these days you do a lot of coaching for really high level leaders, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners. And so you've talked to a ton of people who are trying to do this business game in one way or another. I'm curious from your perspective, what one of the biggest issues sort of underlying all of that you see across the board for people who are trying to do good work in the world?
Yeah, well, one of the issues / opportunities, because remember, obstacles can be seen as in the way or on the way. It's our perspective. So who we are and what we have acquired in life through beliefs, perceptions, identities, behaviors, decision-making skills, who we are before going into business for ourselves comes with us. And so as I see that many, many times, and business is one of the most rewarding personal growth journeys. And you would know that too, Liz. You know, it's been a huge personal growth journey for me. And so you cannot separate at the beginning, the middle, or the end. That if you are an entrepreneur and you want, or a conscious business owner, or any sort of, you know, work in the field, you can only scale your business to the degree that you scale your consciousness, you scale your own self. And so if you can only see to 10 steps ahead of you, then that's what you're going to scale into. If you can see to the horizon and map that out and enroll yourself energetically into that, and you're open and available to those opportunities, not those threats or obstacles that you are going to come into contact with along the way, growth pains, you know, then it is a very rewarding experience. So one of the biggest things I appreciate and value in us as entrepreneurs is our vision. We are all visionaries. We all have incredible imagination. And, you know, one of my props I've got here is a dirty, rusty old tennis ball. And so this is an exercise that I do with my guys. And it is, you visualized yourself into a business. You unpacked who the niche client was, what their problems, you know, and how you can serve them and help them and provide solutions. So to get to where you are right now, whether you're sub 100, sub 1 mil, or, you know, over 10 mil, it doesn't matter. You had a visionary impulse that was quite honed. Now, the imagination is what gets blocked. It's available to all of us, but it's what gets blocked by our own fears or our own, you know, constructs on, can I do it? Can't I do it? Does it need to be difficult? You know, all those sort of things. So I always come back to the tennis ball. That this tennis ball exercise is so simple. It just essentially says, you know, that you focus on the tennis ball and you create a vivid, intimate relationship with the tennis ball in your mind, which is a metaphor for anything that you want. And then you go to bed with that for 3 nights in a row. And in going to bed with it for 3 nights in a row, you are imprinting the subconscious with the tennis ball. Now, during the day, you're not looking for the damn tennis ball, as my clients say, that bloody tennis ball, that goddamn tennis ball, because, you know, they learn to love, hate it. So, and then you let it go for 3 days, but you're not going to look for it in your daily practice. It finds you because it's in your subconscious. Because you have imprinted it, just as we do as entrepreneurs. We are visionaries. How much time do we continue to invest, or how much energy do we continue to invest in imprinting our subconscious, which is really our superconscious talking to themselves, on how our business wants to look, function, but most importantly, what we want the business, how we want the business to perform and give back to us. Because the business gives to the community, but if we allow the business to operate as a parasite on us and our life, it's not a business that's serving us, we're serving the business. And so, you know, go back to how much energy are you investing in your imagination, in the metaphor of the tennis ball, and getting clear, and then letting it go during the day and following those inspired nudges during the day. So you're not hustling and thinking, where is the next client going to come from? Where is this solution to this little break or bottleneck in this department or this area of my life going to come from? You're not looking for it. It finds you. Now, some of my clients have said, yep, I found it within 12 hours. It came to me. Some said, oh, you know, it was 3 days. I let it go. And now I see 3 of them in the storage cupboard that I didn't even know were there. Others are trying to bend it around and saying, look, I knew the tennis balls were there and I opened this particular cupboard in the house or in the office, Does that count? No. Some like 4 to 6 weeks later, after having gotten the Eartha kits with the whole idea of it and said, nah, it doesn't work with stupid bloody tennis ball. And now they're saying, now I'm seeing tennis balls everywhere. I'm saying, so look, this is, I'm taking it on a totally different track here, but
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, we can talk about that all day, and I don't want to take up too much of your time doing so, but I think the takeaway that I was hearing when you were talking about that I think is really important for everyone to pay attention to is when we start a business, we have this grand plan, this grand vision, and then you get into it and it necessarily needs to morph and change, but we don't necessarily have that next version of the grand plan, and it can be very difficult. And I think that's where we get bogged down in, and businesses start to run us versus us being excited about the next step, or even excited about saying, hey, I've reached a plateau that I'm really excited about, and it gives me time to travel, and it gives me time to hang out with my kids, and I'm giving back to the community, and I don't need to grow anymore, whatever it is, or it might be, okay, now I can see the next place. But if we're not continually engaging in that imaginative process, I think that's where stagnation happens, and basically the hard stuff around business building comes to the forefront, and then we get demoralized and things don't really go very well.
Yes, because we're training our brain to be the body continually. So I don't feel like it today, or I feel stressed, or I feel like it's there's more to do at the end of every day in my business. Instead of stepping back, and again, this is what I've said to my clients: trust the process, step back, go and enter your creative zone. What do you think people say? Oh, it used to be go and play on the golf course, or go and play a game of tennis. That still occurs, but now with this entrepreneurial conscious movement of business owners, it's about gathering. It's about connecting with like-minded people, sharing of ideas, and really going into those sacred places, whether it's in nature or in your personal library at home, or going to a coffee shop, whatever it is. Make time to allow the vision to come back in. Otherwise, you're just going to be like the duck on the pond. It looks okay on the top, but underneath you're going like crazy the whole time, and nothing works very well.
Right. Yeah. And I think, many of us struggle with that balance. So I so appreciate the work that you're doing and helping people just remember that. It's very, we can read a book, and many of us read many books because, as you say, entrepreneurs are always looking to level up and do new things. We're interested, but reading versus practicing are two very different things. And a lot of times we have a lot of ideas coming at us, but implementing them over the long term is difficult because we get distracted, or we fall into old patterns, or whatever it is.
Yes, totally.
So I ask people this every time they come on the show, and I'm curious from your perspective. Part of the reason that we've connected so well has been this conversation around Zen and that balance. And I'm wondering from your perspective how you would define Zen money, particularly for business owners, entrepreneurs.
Love that. That's awesome. Zen money is really flow. And so where flow is, if you imagine the stream, the water is the most powerful force because it forges its own path. Now, it has a plan. In my view, the water always knows its destination. It's like light. Light carries its destination with it. And so Zen money is about letting go of this idea that it needs to be hard. Letting go of this idea, this concept that it needs to be a struggle, and that you need to really, really, really work hard to get ahead for the rest of your life, so that you can retire and then die with a smile on your face. And that's tongue in cheek, being a bit silly. But so Zen money is that flow state where actually you've got the people, places, people, tools, and resources that are helping you in your business, like you with your clients, like me, and others. And there is this surrender to the plan. And the plan may be a Zen money map, as an example. The plan may be something else, but you're surrendering to the plan. And in the surrendering of it, you're understanding and appreciating that there is a flow that occurs because you're no longer on the bank watching it, you're in the boat taking the ride. So that's as esoteric, metaphorical as I can get right now.
I love it. I love it. It's great. I so appreciate your time with us. And one last question I have for you is and we've talked about this a lot already, but I'm curious if you were going to leave our listeners with one takeaway, given all of your vast experience and the fact that you work very much with, raising consciousness, for lack of a better term, what's one takeaway you'd like people to have?
Wow. I think the most important thing to remember is that you can shape whatever future you want. And you can shape whatever future you want right now through your imagination. And so the tennis ball analogy, the metaphor of that is super, super powerful. So become intimate with your preferred future. And in becoming intimate with it, it's not a one-night affair. It's not, going to get married before you actually have a cup of coffee or going and having a couple of dinners or whatever it's going to be. Become intimate with it so that you can feel the entire picture now. And as you do that, then your body comes online to a new future, and your mind and your subconscious mind comes online to a new future. Don't stop dreaming, but understand that you can shape your ultimate reality, and you do that right now. You don't do it sometime in the future. You do it now.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you might have something to share with our guests. Is that true? I don't know. Where do people find you, and how can they know more?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you can go to my website, matthewpatti.com. So you'll see some links there. You can, watch some videos and those sort of things. But what I want to give your listeners specifically, and I'm sure there'll be a link around there somewhere, is if you are interested, then I'll actually put the tennis ball exercise as a PDF for you, so you can start to practice that in your own CEO time. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. We will put links to all of the ways you can learn more about what Matthew is doing with his amazing clients and the tennis ball exercise in the show notes. And thank you guys so much for joining us. Matthew, thanks for coming on the show today.
You're welcome, Liz. It's been an absolute pleasure. Loved it.